Welcome to the Iowa Department of Transportation's online meeting to present alternatives being considered for the Gordon Drive Viaduct and Bacon Creek Conduit replacement study. We're presenting project information electronically as a way to provide community outreach during the COVID-19 pandemic. At the end of this presentation, we'll open a live question and answer session where you will be able to type your question and our study team will answer your question. Maps presented in this meeting are not intended to show final design or right-of-way impacts. The purpose of this online meeting is to provide a study overview, review existing conditions along this portion of Gordon Drive, review proposed alternatives, and gather public input to assist in the selection of a preferred alternative. To support traffic and connectivity needs in this area, the Iowa DOT is proposing to reconstruct a segment of Gordon Drive from Virginia Street to Ruston Street in the city of Sioux City. This includes the existing Gordon Drive Viaduct, approach roadways, and the junction of Gordon Drive and Lewis Boulevard. This project would also reconstruct segments of the Bacon Creek Conduit from approximately Lewis Boulevard to Ruston Street. Collectively, the Bacon Creek Conduit is made up of 3 culverts that carry stormwater underground, discharging into the Bacon Creek Channel. These are identified separately as the North, Center, and South conduits. With the South conduit located mostly under Gordon Drive, it is more accessible for reconstruction while work is being performed on Gordon Drive. Built in the early 1900s, and after nearly a decade of reviewing potential repair options, it was determined the South conduit is in need of replacement. The City of Sioux City and the Iowa DOT are partnering to incorporate its replacement as part of the Gordon Drive Viaduct project. The 3,970-foot Gordon Drive Viaduct serves as a vital link between downtown Sioux City and the Sioux City metro area. Originally constructed in the 1930s, the viaduct was built as a 2-lane structure anchoring the west end of then US 20. In 1965, to meet increasing traffic demands, 2 new lanes were added to the viaduct. In 2002, the Iowa DOT completed a study that provided an initial review of possible improvement options for the viaduct. Due to the condition of the structure, it was determined the viaduct would need to be replaced. Since then, the Iowa DOT has provided significant repairs to the viaduct. However, the load capacity of the bridge remains limited, and maintenance costs continue to increase. The purpose of the study is to sustain vehicular and pedestrian and bicyclist mobility of Gordon Drive between Virginia Street and Ruston Street in Sioux City. The need for the proposed action is based on roadway deficiencies, including high maintenance costs, substandard geometrics, an inadequate cross-section, and load limits on structures. In addition, nearby segments of the Bacon Creek Conduit are undersized, in poor condition, and also in need of replacement. In developing proposed alternatives, Iowa DOT considered a variety of criteria, including public and City of Sioux City input, the natural environment, historic, cultural, and socioeconomic impacts, right-of-way, utilities, land use, traffic impacts, and engineering cost and constructability. Using environmental evaluation information, along with public and stakeholder input gathered during a public meeting held in 2019, the Iowa DOT identified initial alternatives to further consider and refine. Initial alternatives were either carried forward for further analysis or eliminated. Eliminated alternatives include those that did not meet project purpose and need, would not function within the context of the corridor, and/or required additional right-of-way impacts without sufficient benefits. The Iowa DOT has developed a range of alternatives for 3 key project components. One is the Gordon Drive Viaduct. Another is the Gordon Drive and Lewis Boulevard Junction. And finally, there is the Bacon Creek Conduit. All options for the junction and conduit are compatible with proposed Gordon Drive Viaduct alignment alternatives presented in this meeting. The study team has developed 2 alternatives for the Gordon Drive Viaduct replacement project. Regardless of the alternative selected, the roadway would be similar and carry 4 traffic lanes as it does today. The new bridge would be built wider than the current structure, and additional right-of-way would be necessary south of the existing viaduct. In addition, all railroad crossings would be designed to meet current railroad clearance specifications. South adjacent alignment alternative. For this alternative, a new Gordon Drive would be built approximately 100 feet south of the existing viaduct from Virginia Street to Fairmount Street. More right-of-way would be necessary south of the existing viaduct where the new Gordon Drive would be built. In this alternative, the Iowa DOT intends for the existing viaduct to remain open to traffic until the new roadway is operational. New bridges would be built over the Floyd River and Union Pacific Railroad on the west end and over Bacon Creek and the BNSF Railroad on the east end. On alignment alternative. For this alternative, the existing viaduct would be completely replaced in the same location along Gordon Drive from Virginia Street to Fairmount Street. Less right-of-way expansion to the south would be needed. Because the new structure would be built in the same location along Gordon Drive, reconnection on either end would be less complicated and there would be fewer right-of-way impacts. In this alternative, the existing structure would not be able to accommodate all traffic during construction. Complicated construction phasing would result in more traffic impacts and detours. Gordon Drive and Lewis Boulevard Junction proposed alternatives. The study team has developed 3 alternatives for the Gordon Drive and Lewis Boulevard Junction. Partial cloverleaf interchange alternative. A partial cloverleaf interchange, or PARCLO, is the most similar option to what drivers experience at this location today. The proposed replacement would eliminate the eastbound to southbound ramp routing traffic to a new signal on Lewis Boulevard. This would simplify the interchange and save construction costs. Northeast Quadrant interchange alternative. This alternative features a connecting roadway between Gordon Drive and Lewis Boulevard and the northeast quadrant of the crossing. Gordon Drive passes over Lewis Boulevard as it does today. In this alternative, vehicles turning from one roadway to the other would pass through the signalized at-grade intersections on both Gordon Drive and Lewis Boulevard. The connection between Lewis Boulevard and Dace Avenue would remain. At-grade intersection alternative. This alternative would reconstruct the existing Lewis Boulevard interchange as an at-grade, or same level, signalized intersection, similar to other major intersections along Gordon Drive. Lewis Boulevard would be shifted to the east, and its elevation increased through the intersection area to connect with Gordon Drive. The at-grade intersection's similarity to other intersections along Gordon Drive and Lewis Boulevard better meets driver expectations. Bacon Creek Conduit proposed alternatives. The study team has developed 4 alternatives for the Bacon Creek Conduit part of the project. 16-foot by 10-foot concrete box culvert on existing alignment alternative. For this alternative, the south conduit would be replaced under Gordon Drive from Lewis Boulevard to Ruston Street with a larger structure to capture more Bacon Creek stormwater runoff at the Ruston Street inlet. By replacing only the conduit with condition issues, less right-of-way would be necessary, and the Iowa DOT and the city can minimize costs. Since the conduit is underneath Gordon Drive, roadway closures and traffic detours would be required during construction. 16-foot by 10-foot concrete box culvert with Gordon shift alternative. For this alternative, the south conduit would be replaced under Gordon Drive from Lewis Boulevard to Ruston Street with a larger structure to capture Bacon Creek stormwater runoff at the Ruston Street inlet. By replacing only the conduit with condition issues, the Iowa DOT and the city can minimize costs. Gordon Drive would be shifted south, and the new conduit would run under the westbound portion of the roadway. By shifting the roadway, traffic could continue to use Gordon Drive during culvert construction. Additional right-of-way would be necessary from properties along the south side of the road. Triple 10-foot by 11-foot concrete box culvert with Gordon shift alternative. For this alternative, both the south and center conduits would be replaced under Gordon Drive from Lewis Boulevard to Ruston Street with a significantly larger single structure to capture Bacon Creek stormwater runoff at the Ruston Street inlet. Replacing the 2 conduits comes with a higher cost, but proactively addresses potential future center conduit needs. Gordon Drive would be shifted south, and the new conduit would run under the westbound portion of the roadway. By shifting the roadway, traffic could continue to use Gordon Drive during culvert construction. Additional right-of-way would be necessary from properties along the south side of the road. 16-foot by 10-foot concrete box culvert between Gordon and Correctionville alternative. For this alternative, the south conduit under Gordon Drive from Lewis Boulevard to Ruston Street would be replaced and located between Gordon Drive and Correctionville Road with a larger structure to capture Bacon Creek stormwater runoff at the Ruston Street inlet. Because the culvert would be shifted north, right-of-way would be needed from properties located between Gordon Drive and Correctionville Road. Shifting the culvert would minimize construction and traffic impacts along Gordon Drive during future maintenance or replacements. Traffic could continue to use Gordon Drive during construction since the culvert would be built outside the roadway. By replacing only the conduit with condition issues, the Iowa DOT and the city can minimize costs. Cost estimates range between approximately $96 to $104 million for the proposed Gordon Drive Viaduct and Lewis Boulevard Junction alternatives. Proposed Bacon Creek conduit alternatives range from approximately $23 to $33 million. Viaduct portions of the project would be funded by the Iowa DOT, and the Bacon Creek conduit costs would be shared between the Iowa DOT and the City of Sioux City. The Iowa DOT is continuing to evaluate alternatives. This process is required when the significance of environmental impacts are uncertain as part of the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. The purpose of the NEPA process is to clarify uncertainties, document findings, and gather public input. A public hearing will be held at a future date to present refined alternatives for each portion of the project. The Iowa DOT will continue to develop the environmental assessment and location study report prior to selecting preferred alternatives and final design. Thank you for reviewing information for the Gordon Drive Viaduct and Bacon Creek Conduit Replacement Study. We will now conduct a live question and answer session. You can click on the Join the Podium button to type in your comment or question for the study team to answer.